The comments and statements made within the show are the opinions of the commentators and their guests and have not been evaluated by the FDA and are in no way an attempt to diagnose, treat, mitigate, cure, or prevent any disease or illness. The contents of the show are not to be construed as medical advice. If you have a health condition or health concern, please contact a licensed qualified healthcare practitioner.
Welcome to Herbal Answers with Nan. I'm Nan, a clinical practitioner with over 35 years of experience in herbal medicine, homeopathy, and the natural products world. And this is the show where ancient wisdom and modern science get to sit down and have a conversation. Every episode I bring you research-backed, clinically grounded insights into the world of natural medicine. Whether you're a practitioner, curious patient, or someone who simply believes that nature has something profound to offer us, you belong here. Today, we're recording our What's Old is New Again series, where we explore ancient healing traditions that have not just survived the test of time, but are now being confirmed by some seriously rigorous modern science. So settle in, because it's going to be a long one. And let's begin. Menopause. Let's talk about it, okay? I think it's important to have this conversation. For some women, menopause arrives quietly, barely noticed. For others, it feels like a complete upheaval. Their very good sleep is gone, their thermostat is broken, and they wonder who replaced their personality with somebody else's. Honestly, I think that's why there isn't much of a conversation about it between the generations. There are so many versions of menopause that one cannot possibly prepare our daughters and our granddaughters as to how it will manifest for them. It's so vastly different from woman to woman that describing it becomes elusive and strange, and in some cases, a situation of TMI, unfortunately. Western medicine has for decades framed menopause primarily as a hormone deficiency problem, something to be corrected, suppressed, or replaced. And while modern hormone therapy absolutely has a role for some women, the conversation has often stopped right there. But ancient Asian herbal medicine, a system developed over 2,000 years ago, has been mapping, describing, and treating the menopausal transition in extraordinary detail since long before estrogen was even discovered. And here's what I find especially extraordinary. The most respected scholars of traditional Chinese medicine, including the very brilliant Giovanni Maciocia, whose landmark textbook, Obstetrics and Gynecology, right here, in Chinese medicine is part of my library of reference texts, makes a point that is both clinically revolutionary and deeply reassuring to women. Menopause is not a disease. It is the normal physiological transition in a woman's life from reproductive to non-reproductive stage. And indeed, many women experience no symptoms at all during this time. So let me say that again. Many women experience no symptoms at all. So menopause only requires intervention when a woman experiences seriously uncomfortable symptoms that genuinely affect her quality of life. So today we're going to explore what TCM teaches us about why some women suffer and others don't, and what's available in the ancient herbal toolkit that modern clinical research is now backing up with impressive evidence. So to delve a little deeper into this health philosophy, let's map out the transition from an herbal perspective, of course. And to understand how herbal medicine thinks about menopause, we need to start with what they call the kidney. And I want to be clear, when traditional Chinese medicine refers to the kidney, it's not just talking about the organ that filters your blood. In Chinese medicine, the kidney represents an entire energetic system, the storehouse of what is called kidney essence, or Jing. So think of kidney essence as your constitutional life force, your biological inheritance. It governs reproductive capacity, bone density, hair vitality, memory, drive, and immune strength. And here's a stunning piece of biology that bridges east and west perfectly. In the developing fetus, there are approximately 6 million primordial follicles in the ovaries of a female fetus. That goes without saying, but I felt like I needed to say it. By birth, that number has already declined to about 600,000. By the time of menarche, which is a girl's first period, there are roughly 300,000. And by menopause, only around 10,000 remain. Chinese medicine looked at this gradual, lifelong biological process and said, menopause is not an event that happens suddenly. It is the culmination of a physiological arc that began before a woman was born. This is kidney essence. Slowly, naturally, and inevitably, we decline over a lifetime. That framing changes everything because it shifts the conversation from something went wrong or something's wrong with me to this is how it was always going to unfold. And this is the most important part to understand. How you've lived your life, up until now determines how the transition feels. So I want to give some examples of that. If you've worked 2 jobs or birthed and then raised 3 children or more, maybe by yourself, tried all types of crazy diets, or conversely have never paid attention to your nutrition, slept under 6 hours every night, maybe even worked night shifts, and basically burned the candle from every end available, and this could set you up for symptomatic menopause. And this is not a judgment. I really want to say this clearly. We do what we need to do to take care of the children and the home and ourselves, right? However, the body keeps score. Please remember that. The body keeps score and never forgets. So let me offer this other point of view. If menopause was strictly about the decline of our hormones, why is it that there are women who never get hot flashes or night sweats? They never get anxiety or hair loss. They never get unleashed weight gain or insomnia. It would stand to reason if menopause was only about the decline of hormones, then every single woman would experience all of the same or nearly the same symptoms, correct? But that's not what happens. Okay, so now that I've put that in your mind and I've put it out there, let's delve into the patterns of menopause and why so many of us experience different symptoms. According to traditional Chinese medicine, based on the extensive clinical mapping of scholars like Giovanni Maciocia and seen in my own practice, there are 7 distinct patterns of symptomatic menopause. Not 1, 7. And there are actually more subsets, but 7 kind of is the overview. Each pattern requires a different herbal approach. So let me walk you through them. And as I do, notice how many of them probably sound like someone you know. Maybe it's you. Pattern 1, kidney yin deficiency. This is probably the most recognized pattern. When kidney yin is depleted, the body loses its cooling, nourishing, and moistening quality. The result, classic hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia, vaginal dryness, dry skin, anxiety, mild, but you notice it, and a tongue that appears red with little or no coating. Think of yin as the water element. When the water is low, the fire appears to rise. Pattern 2, kidney yang deficiency. This one surprises people. Maciocia observed that roughly half of the menopausal women that he treated actually had a pale tongue, indicating kidney yang deficiency rather than yin. These women may still experience hot flashes because when yang is deficient, yin also is reduced. So think of a tide going out and all the boats end up going lower in the water. That's what happens. But they tend to feel cold and exhausted and have lower back weakness or lower back aches and frequent urination. And they're puffy and they kind of hold water around their wrists and their ankles. This is the woman who bundles up while everyone else is shedding layers. And then she'll have a hot flash, ripping all of her clothes off until her chills return where she covers up again. So you know people like that. Patterns 3, 4, and 5, we call them the complex or the compounded patterns. Many women present with both kidney yin and yang deficiency, varying proportions, which is actually quite common in women over 40. Others develop what's called kidney and liver yin deficiency with liver yang rising. And those are often the women experiencing the most dramatic emotional storms, intense irritability. They actually say to me, I don't know who I am anymore. Headaches, maybe dizziness, ringing in the ears, hair falling out, mental and emotional changes, and sometimes even rising blood pressure when their blood pressure used to be low when they were younger. They can feel these panic attacks coming on when they've never had them before. They can feel nauseous and don't know what to eat. They can sometimes have blinding headaches and are confused since they don't have the same level of hormones to relate to the headaches because they may have had menstrual headaches. And yet here they are with lower hormones and worse headaches. So then in those instances, there's the pattern of the kidney and liver, so combined together. Last but not least in these combined patterns is the pattern of the kidneys and the heart not harmonized. There's anxiety, there's palpitations, and they can't sleep. They are crawling the walls at night. They're exhausted during the day. They literally cannot close their eyes at night. And no matter how tired that woman is, She will feel like invasion of the body snatchers. She just won't know herself at all. And really, it seems like a mental health issue, but it really is one of the patterns of menopause. And generally, these women were solid emotionally most of their life. So it's real. It really happens like this. There are a couple more patterns, 6 and 7. These are phlegm patterns, phlegm and blood stasis. So the last two patterns are particularly relevant in our modern clinical landscape. Accumulation of phlegm, not phlegm like phlegm that you suck up, although it does include that. There's another kind of phlegm in the body. And stagnant qi, where the qi doesn't move. The woman presents with significant weight gain. They'll feel heavy, lethargic. They'll have brain fog, a foggy quality to their thinking, and difficulty getting motivated. Absolutely. She feels as if her life is over, cannot understand why she has put on so much weight without her diet hardly changing. She sees her cholesterol rise and yet cannot get out of her own way to move her body. There are significant body aches and pains, especially when it rains or when it's humid. That's the phlegm pattern. And then the stasis of blood associated with a past history of painful, dark, clotted periods, and often stubborn depression that doesn't fit the standard mood pattern of depression. Maciocia notes, importantly, that premature menopause, so anything that happens before the age of 40, is more often linked to blood stasis and phlegm than to simple kidney deficiency. So the earlier you go into menopause, the more possible that phlegm and blood stasis are part of that pattern than just kidney yin or kidney yin and yang deficiency. So you can see the complexity here. And there's a clinical genius of this system, because although it might seem complex to you, it's actually simple to holistic practitioners who are trained in these patterns and can recognize these patterns, because no two menopausal women are treated identically. The formula a TCM practitioner chooses depends on tongue diagnosis, pulse assessment, and a detailed symptom mapping. So it's a diagnostic process that takes the entire woman into account. Not just, oh, you're in menopause, here's some HRT. Some women really do well on it, and some women do not. And so I ask this question again. Why do some women suffer so much more? And here is where ancient herbal medicine offers something truly unique, a framework for understanding why symptoms vary so dramatically from woman to woman. And here I'll draw directly from both the classical teachings and my own clinical observations. The severity of menopausal symptoms is largely determined by how a woman has lived her life up to this point. Not genetics alone, not luck, lifestyle. Emotional stress. Let's talk about emotional stress and how it can set you up for symptomatic menopause. Worry, anxiety, anger, guilt, fear. These are the emotions that, according to ancient herbal medicine, weaken the kidneys and accelerate the decline of kidney essence. When these emotional patterns build up over years and decades before menopause begins, they create the terrain for a difficult transition. I see this in practice consistently. A high achieving, chronically stressed woman in her 40s who could handle it before, she put a lid on it and just, marched on. She hits perimenopause and feels like she hit a wall she did not see coming. And it's really like this. It is like a dead stop. Okay. There's also the overworked combined with poor rest. And these are the women who are working 2 jobs to keep the family going, take care of the kids. They work ridiculously long hours. They don't rest well. And combine that with irregular eating habits, constant worry. It's described in the classical text as the most common cause of kidney deficiency, and specifically kidney yin deficiency. So Chinese herbal medicine warned us about burnout 2,000 years before it became a workplace buzzword. Another piece of lifestyle that is hugely indicative of how menopause will show up for you is diet. There's 2 dietary extremes that show up as significant risk factors here. Excessive greasy foods and too much dairy over many years leads to phlegm accumulation, which aggravates hot flashes, insomnia, and mental restlessness, which is, that foggy, heavy quality some women describe. And on the other end, years of an unbalanced plant-only diet without careful attention to adequate protein. So it's okay to have a good plant-only diet as long as you make sure you get enough protein and you food combined to make that happen. But if you don't, and you're eating pasta and rice dishes all the time, that could contribute to blood and yin deficiency. And as Machiocha writes directly from his clinical experience, phlegm is common in many menopausal women, and it aggravates everything. Okay. More about the diet. Stimulants, coffee, tea, and alcohol. Well, alcohol is really a depressant, but the sugar in it can stimulate first. These are described in TCM as warm and drying in their energetic quality. So you know where I'm going, right? The drying piece, right? And they aggravate menopausal hot flashes and night sweats directly. Many of my patients find that genuinely reducing coffee and alcohol produces a real and measurable reduction in hot flash frequency. This isn't a new recommendation. This is 2,000-year-old clinical observation. And I know if you love your cup of coffee in the morning, really sorry for that. You can have herbal tea, or you can have occasional decaf coffee, but be careful. I know you're wanting stimulants, but healing the underlying pattern first will really help you have a much more comfortable transit. And then last but not least, smoking. Ancient Chinese physicians who encountered tobacco after its introduction to China from the West in the 1500s quickly identified it as hot and drying, damaging to blood, fluids, essence, and yin, and specifically injurious to the kidney chain. Their clinical conclusion: smoking significantly worsens menopausal symptoms. Modern research absolutely agrees. So I want to take a moment to discuss the Western medical perspective, because understanding both views is essential to truly serving our patients and our listeners. Western medicine identifies menopause primarily as a decline in estrogen production from the ovaries. After menopause, the body's main circulating estrogen shifts from the more potent estradiol to a weaker form called estrone, produced largely in adipose tissue. Hot flashes are the most common menopausal symptoms, affecting up to 85% of menopausal women, with 45% experiencing them for 5 to 10 years or more after menopause. Something to look forward to. So the standard Western approach has been hormone replacement therapy. That's it. That's what you get in various forms: oral tablets, transdermal patches, gels, and implants. For many women, it provides rapid and meaningful relief. And I want to be clear, for some women, particularly those with severe symptoms, or those who have a significant risk for osteoporosis, HRT is a legitimate option. I believe deeply in an integrative, individualized approach, and there is a place at the table for HRT in some women's lives. Some physicians disallow women who have had breast cancer or uterine cancer or ovarian cancer, or have a mother or sister who have had hormone-related cancers. So you may not be able to obtain HRT. And if you are one of those women, the good news is there are options. And so with that said, the research history of HRT is genuinely complex. It is not clear. The landmark Women's Health Initiative trial, which enrolled over 16,600 postmenopausal women, was stopped early after 5.2 years because the combined estrogen and progestin group showed a significantly increased risk of breast cancer of 26%, coronary heart disease of 29%, and shockingly, stroke of 41%. The researchers concluded that the overall health risk exceeded the benefits for that particular combination. Now, this doesn't mean HRT is wrong for everyone, but it does mean that the conversation must be individualized and fully informed, and it absolutely opens the door to the question: what else do we have for women going through symptomatic menopause? Herbal medicine, as Machiocha eloquently writes, works by gently tonifying the kidneys and the kidney essence to help the women navigate transition. It does not trick the body into thinking it is still ovulating. It works with the physiological transition rather than around it. The effects are gentler and build more slowly, but the safety profile is remarkable, and the clinical evidence is now genuinely compelling. So now let's talk about the clinical tools themselves, because this is where the story becomes really exciting. Chinese herbal medicine has an arsenal of classical formulas for menopause that have been in clinical use for centuries, and many of them are now being tested in rigorous randomized controlled trials with impressive results. Remember what I said earlier, there are 3 to 4 clinically effective herbal formulas available for each of the 7 patterns. The selection of the right formula requires the ancient diagnostic art of tongue and pulse assessment. This is where the art and the science comes together. So let me walk you through some of the most well-researched formulas currently in use. Tang, the two immortals decoction. And this is probably the most celebrated classical menopausal formula in all of Chinese medicine because it has some of the strongest modern research behind it. Its name, two immortals, refers to two of its key herbs, Mao, which is curculago, and yin yang ho, which is epimedium. And a lot of people know epimedium because we call it horny goatweed. These herbs have adaptogenic and mildly androgenic properties that support both kidney yin and especially kidney yang. A systematic review published in the American Journal of Chinese Medicine examined multiple randomized controlled trials of Tang, referred to in the literature as decoction. And this was for menopausal symptoms. The meta-analysis found that Tang significantly relieved at least one menopausal symptom compared to a control group at 95% confidence interval. Crucially, its efficacy was found to be better than non-hormonal therapies, with no significant difference found between Tang and menopausal hormone therapy groups in overall symptom relief. So no significant difference compared to hormone therapy, with a fraction of the risk. That is a headline-worthy finding. Another formula called Dong Quai Bu Zhu Tang, Zhu meaning blood, Angelica tonifying blood decoction. This is a beautiful and elegant formula of just two herbs, sometimes called deceptively simple, but clinically powerful. Dong Quai, Angelica sinensis, known in the West as Dong Quai, paired with Huang Qi or astragalus, together they nourish blood and support Qi simultaneously. A 6-month randomized double-blind placebo-controlled study conducted at the Chinese University of Hong Kong involving 100 women found that Dong Quai Bu Zhu Tang was statistically superior to placebo in reducing mild hot flashes. There were no serious adverse events attributable to the treatment during the entire study period. Clean efficacy, clean safety. There's another formula called menoprogen, a multiple herb combination formula. A pilot observational study published in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine assessed menoprogen, which is a formula containing guojitsu, which is wolfberry or lycium, combined with schizandra, hawthorn fruit, safflower, and mulberry fruit in peri- and postmenopausal women. The study found a significant reduction in Kupperman menopausal index scores, along with significant increases in endogenous estrogen and progesterone levels. Importantly, no endometrial hyperplasia was observed after the herbal treatment, which is a critical safety marker when we're talking about estrogenic activity. Another formula, Gang Yan An, very lovely formula, the peaceful menopause powder. In a double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial involving 69 overectomized, they take out their ovaries, Chinese women, a particularly challenging population because surgical menopause creates more abrupt hormonal changes than natural menopause. Gang Yan An was administered twice daily for 12 weeks. At the end of the study, significant improvements were found in total Kupperman scoring, vaginal epithelial maturation, and levels of FSH, LH, and estradiol compared to placebo. The researchers concluded it may be a useful alternative for women unable or unwilling to receive hormone replacement therapy. And then, last but not least, Black Cohosh, also known as Shangma or Simicifuga racemosa. Here's a beautiful bridge between Eastern and Western herbal traditions. Black Cohosh, known in Chinese medicine as Shangma, Simicifuga, has been studied extensively in both contexts, both in the West and in the East. An isopropanolic extract of Black Cohosh, sold under the brand name Remifemin, was compared head-to-head with tibolone, which is a synthetic steroid hormone used in Europe for menopause, in a randomized double-blind study of 244 menopausal women in China. Both groups showed significant reduction on the Kupperman menopausal index, but the Black Cohosh group had significantly fewer adverse events. None of the Black Cohosh patients experienced vaginal bleeding, compared to 17 cases in the tibolone group, which is a really common HRT secondary side effect. The benefit-risk balance was significantly superior for Black Cohosh. Okay, so I want to step back to look at the broad picture. A 2024 meta-analysis of 61 studies found that soy isoflavones can reduce hot flash frequency by 40 to 75%, particularly at doses around 50 milligrams per day. And a comprehensive review published in 2024 found strong evidence across 70 randomized controlled trials that East Asian herbal formulas are safe and effective for menopausal insomnia without interfering with endocrine therapies. So even if you're on HRT. I also use other well-known and deeply studied formulas such as Tianwang Buzhendang, Lu Wei de Wangwan, and Si Wu Tang, to name a few. These are all chosen according to patterns discovered through a proper intake, as well as tongue and pulse confirmation. It stands to reason in any holistic practice, there's a focus on food as medicine, and specifically a category of compounds called phytoestrogens. I just mentioned it. But because they're widely discussed, frequently misunderstood, and genuinely important for women navigating menopause, I do want to discuss it here and now. Phytoestrogens are not estrogens. This is a critical distinction. They are compounds found in plants that have a chemical structure somewhat similar to estrogen, but their action on the body is fundamentally different, often modulating and balancing rather than purely stimulating or purely adding. They can bind to estrogen receptors and behave as weak estrogens when estrogen is deficient. But by occupying those receptors, they can also prevent the body's stronger estrogen from binding when there is excess. So creating what we call a homeostatic or self-regulating effect. It can be quite poetic, and it's really easy on the body. The research on isolated phytoestrogen supplements shows mixed results. Some studies support their use, some don't. But here's the key insight from both Maciocia and from the science that we just covered. When these compounds are consumed as part of whole food in a balanced diet, their behavior is quite different. Whole plants contain multiple constituents that work synergistically, buffering, modulating, balancing each other. So think tofu, miso, tempeh, maybe homemade soy milk, not the soy milk you buy in the grocery store, because there's a lot of other stuff in there that may not be appropriate. Instead of capsules or isolated phytoestrogens, think about the food. You can eat edamame a couple of times a week. It's delicious. It's got great fiber. Having some of these legumes in our diet can be so great for our digestion as well. Japan offers us a compelling real-world example. It's a country where consumption of phytoestrogens, particularly from whole soy foods, is very high. And rates of breast cancer there are considerably lower than in Western countries. This is epidemiological, not definitive causation, but it is a pattern worth noticing. The foods richest in phytoestrogens in descending order of concentration are the following: flax seeds, yams, like the purple yams, soybeans, tofu, soy yogurt, sesame seeds, and homemade soy milk. Maciocia's clinical recommendation, one I share, is to derive phytoestrogens from whole food rather than isolated supplement extracts, and to be cautious with any form of hormone manipulation, including bioidentical hormones. And the dietary wisdom for menopause from Chinese medicine is elegantly simple. Plenty of vegetables and whole grains and whole legumes, reduced greasy and dairy foods, limited alcohol, coffee, and tea, and careful attention to complete protein intake, especially if you follow a plant-focused diet. I'd like to close our conversation about menopause today with something that I think is one of the most powerful clinical insights in this entire body of work. And it's a message that belongs in every conversation with a woman in her 30s. The menopause you experience in your 50s is largely determined by how you live your life right now in your 20s and 30s. By the time you're in your 40s, you're in perimenopause. And I will be sharing a podcast on that in-between time in the near future. Maciocia has been counseling younger women, or had been counseling younger women decades before they ever reached menopausal age, about the lifestyle factors that will shape their transition. If he sees a woman in her 30s with life habits likely to lead to a difficult menopause, he addresses it then, not after the symptoms arrive in the late 40s and early 50s. His core guidance, which I echo fully in my own practice: don't smoke anything at all. Limit alcohol, tea, and coffee. Coffee can also be implicated in osteopenia and osteoporosis. Don't chronically overwork. Avoid excessive greasy foods and too much dairy. Some of Americans sometimes have dairy 3 times a day. Eat plenty of vegetables and whole grains and whole fruits, and actively address and process emotional stress, not as a short-term fix, but as a sustained approach to living. In herbal medicine, these aren't just healthy habits. They are acts of protecting and preserving your kidney essence, your jing, and your constitutional vitality for the decades ahead. What a different landscape women's healthcare would look like if this perspective was universally understood from the beginning. We've covered a lot of ground today, and I want to leave you with the thread that ties all of it together. The body, your body, is deeply, brilliantly intelligent. The menopausal transition is not a malfunction. It is a passage, and that passage can be walked with grace, with support, and with the extraordinary herbal wisdom of a medical tradition that has been refining its understanding of this exact transition for over 2,000 years. In truth, the years that encompass menopause and postmenopause are an opportunity for women. Think of it this way. The energy our body puts into the preparation of the uterus and then the shedding of that material is now free for us. It's now available to us and for us. This is why so many women go back to school or start a business or travel the world after menopause. They can now access that energy of creation for their own use instead of for the propagation of the species, which is important, and you probably already did that piece, but it is wonderful. And I wish more women lived into this truth instead of some adage that once they cannot have children, a woman is dried up and the purpose of their life is over. That's just not true, especially once you are through your transit and are in right relationship with your new body. The possibilities are endless. Whether you're decades away from menopause, right in the thick of it, or a practitioner helping patients navigate it, I hope today gave you a new map, 7 patterns, specific research-backed formulas, ancient dietary wisdom meeting modern clinical trials. As always, none of what we discuss here replaces personalized care from a qualified practitioner. Please work with someone who can assess your individual picture. Ideally, someone trained in both conventional and herbal or integrative medicine. The best care is always an informed, personalized conversation. So thank you, as always, for spending this time with me. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need this perspective. And if you have any questions, topics you'd like me to dig into, or stories from your own experience, I do want to hear from you. I'm Nan. This is Herbal Answers with Nan. And the herbs always have something more to teach us. Take good care. Ta-ta for now.